High School. And he is a board certified in pediatric pulmonary as well as general pediatrics. He has history of being a past president, fellow and approved consultant of the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis, and he's the author of a book, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, A Journey to the Center. His experience has offered him the opportunity to direct and co-direct more than 20 clinic workshops and the subject on the subject of pediatric hypnosis. Additionally, he has trained more than 1,000 healthcare providers and lectured all over the world, and we're very lucky to have him presenting to us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and welcome everyone. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself before we get into the meat of this discussion, and hopefully there'll be time at the end to answer any questions you might have. So I'm a pediatric lung doctor who fell into the world of hypnosis 25 years ago. And what happened was I had a patient who was sent to me who was very allergic to milk products. He was so allergic that twice he almost died from eating a milk product. And he came to me, I was seeing him for his asthma, and he said, lately, when I've been smelling cheeseburgers, I've been developing asthma attacks. I thought that was rather strange, but maybe milk molecule was wafting through the air and triggering his asthma, which, by the way, it cannot do. And I said to him, well, could you imagine eating a cheeseburger, which is something he could not do in real life? And within seconds, he was having an asthma attack in front of my eyes. And I thought to myself, oh no, he's going to stop breathing. And I said, stop it. And he did. And I said, wait a minute, you imagine yourself into an attack? If you can imagine yourself into illness, can you imagine yourself out? Later, I found out that was hypnosis. And so that got me on my journey into this psychological world as it affects medicine. So after I learned hypnosis, and I learned from reading books and attending conferences, I started doing it with my patients in the lung world, patients who had coughing or shortness of breath, and with chest pain. And then it worked so well that I started using it for children of all kinds. I'm a pediatrician as well as a pulmonologist. So I had kids with headaches or stomach aches or nail biting or bedwetting or anxiety and depression. It's really all of human, everything that can benefit from the mind-body connection. So as I did this for a number of years, I came to realize that most everyone can benefit from learning how to help with their emotions. Now, I kept saying hypnosis. We should take a moment and say it's not what you think it is. This is not magic. It's not mind control. It's not a magician telling you what to do or an evil person telling you to commit crimes. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. You can stop anytime. And hypnosis is not even unusual. We all do hypnosis all the time. We don't realize it. For example, how many of you ever daydreamed? That's hypnosis. How many of you have driven down the road 3 miles and said, how to get here? That's hypnosis. That's the hypnosis state of mind. Within that mind, you can give yourself suggestions or be given suggestions by a therapist to improve whatever you're working on. I think that every person with chronic symptoms can benefit from hypnosis. And the reason is, if you have chronic medical symptoms, this is adults and children, your psychology is going to be involved. Maybe you're anxious, that you have asthma and you can't breathe. That might make you anxious or should make you anxious. And that anxiety can make your symptoms worse. So by learning to regulate your emotions, you can improve. Or there are a whole host of patients who develop symptoms because they're stressed, be it your child who develops belly aches because they're being bullied at school, or maybe you have a tough boss at work that causes you headaches. Those are examples of psychologically issues causing symptoms. And in that case, if you learn to manage your psychology, then your symptoms go away. So there's a whole branch of medicine that can benefit. So as part of my travels learning about hypnosis, I learned a lot about working with my teenage patients, the high school students I work with, and that's what I'm going to focus sharing with you now. So what did I learn from my interactions with children that you can use as a parent of a high school student? So I'm going to now do my best to share my screen. So give me a moment while I do the technology thing, and hopefully it'll work. Yes, so far, so good. slideshow. Okay, so most of my slides, there's stuff on the right side. So if you see photographs, you see the people, you see me on the right, move it to the left so you won't obscure the slides. All right, so we're going to talk about 8 tips that you can use as parents. First one, believe in your teenager's abilities. I can tell you that as I work with teens and as I started working with their subconscious, so let's define subconscious. Subconscious is the part of your mind that you're not aware of. And like the conscious, we talk about the conscience, comes from the subconscious, if you like. And I actually developed a method where you can even, the subconscious can even type with you. It can talk verbally, it can even type with you. And through talking to teenagers' subconscious, I learned an awful lot about what they know in their internal world. And I'm telling you that teenagers are amazingly wise when you get deep down. The typical high school kid acts without thinking, they do stupid things, but deep down, they know exactly what's right and wrong in most cases, including kids that are 10, 11 years old. It doesn't even start in late teens. So I know that about teenagers because I've had the privilege of interacting with them. So I'm telling you, as a parent of a teenager, your kid, whether they show it or not, knows a lot more than they might even realize. And I think my job as a physician and your job as a parent is to help your child bring out what they already know. But to do that, you need to be patient. And especially if the child is not even aware of it, especially if the child's not even aware of it, you need to, we'll talk about a little bit later how to help them verbalize what they know. So believe in their abilities and make sure that your actions demonstrate your belief in them. So I work with parents, they're pretty hard-driven kids out there, and there's hard-driven parents who believe their job is to make sure their high school student achieves really well. And they're on top of that student all the time. Do your homework, do your sports, do your extracurriculars, whatever it is. When the parent micromanages the kid, the message to the child is, you can't do it by yourself. I don't believe in you. Because if you could do it by yourself, I could just back off and you'll do it. But sometimes the parent's anxiety about making sure their teen does well precludes the teen from really finding out for themselves how they can do. And it's also really important to allow your high school student to flop. It's really important so they can learn how to flop and then pick themselves up. A lot of parents these days, they don't want their child to suffer. Oh, we don't want them to get a bad grade, or oh, we don't want them to get cut from their sports team because that would be devastating. But the truth is, to succeed in life, you need to learn how to flop and get back up and not pick them up. Let the child pick themselves up. And sometimes it's really hard. That's what's called tough love, right? Let the child pick themselves up. Believe in them. You can do this. So you can act as a supporter. One of the things I talk about to parents of older teens is your role should be changing from that of an enforcer to that of a supporter. So you're going to support them, but you're not going to make them. There's a great book by an author named Foster Cline, C-L-I-N-E, called, I didn't prepare it, Love and Logic for Teenagers. And Dr. Kline's premise is that your job as a parent is to provide your teenager an environment where he or she can succeed. It's not your job to make sure they succeed. That's your teenager's job. So if you keep that in mind, you'll be guided better how to help your child. I like to give quotes. Here is one that says, believe in your children and they will believe in themselves, which is very, very true. Tip number 2, be positive. Now, you've all heard that, be positive, but it's really true. And you need to hopefully convey this to your child, both in actions and words. In my book that we mentioned, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, I describe an example of how being positive, the teens get it. So what I do is I have the teen stand up and put out the arm like this, and I have somebody else push down on the arm. If the other person is about equal strength over here, if the other person is much weaker, go further down the arm. And then I tell the teen, keep your arm up as best as you can. And usually they can. And then I say, let's do this exercise again. But this time, before your arm is pressed down, you're going to say, I'm weak, I'm weak, I'm weak. And then typically the arm will go down when it's pressed and the teen will be surprised. And then I'll say, now say I'm strong 3 times. I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong. And then the arm stays up. And the teen typically is puzzled. And how does that work? And we talk about how what you say is what happens. The last part of the demonstration, which does not work with moms and teens, I don't know what it is about moms and teens, but is when the teen says, I'm not weak, your arm also goes down. So then we have a discussion with the teenager to say, you see how negative words affect you negatively. So you want to say things in a positive way. This is not affirmations. It's not like saying, like when you feel sick, say, I'm healthy, I'm healthy. You're not, you're sick. But it is, you can say something like, I want to be healthy. And if you have a big exam coming up, rather than saying, I'm going to fail, you say, I want to succeed. If you have a social event, instead of saying, I'm really nervous, say, I want to be calm. So think about what you want to happen. And the reason that works is that your mind focuses on what you think about. So if you say, I'm really nervous about the social event, you'll be nervous because you've just reinforced it. But if you say, I want to be calm, the mind is saying, how am I going to get there? And you're more apt to get there. Now, you as parents need to also be positive with your children because what you say sinks in. So if you say, you're lazy, that sinks in. Better to say, you can be more industrious. You can be more productive than you are. Rather than saying, you're stupid, you can be smarter. So I usually give that as an assignment to families to work with each other. I'll tell the teen to watch out for the parents. They like that. And work together on being positive. Because the attitude that follows being positive is one that allows a teen to succeed. I quote Henry Ford, 100 years ago. He said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Because what you say is what happens. And sometimes when I teach this to teens, they turn around. This is probably the weakest tool I teach, but they turn around just by being positive. And so many people are negative out there these days. So really work, and it's not negating the negative. If you're nervous, don't say I'm not nervous. Well, first of all, that's negative. I'm not nervous. But don't pretend you feel great, but tell yourself how you want to be. Tip number 3, use active listening. And I would say this is probably the most important tip here in terms of parenting high school students. I find that most families, the teens and their parents do not listen to one another. The parent is busy telling a teen, this is how you should be. And the teen basically doesn't even listen. And the teen yells at the parents and the parent doesn't listen. And this just continues. It's a bad cycle. It's useless. If you're the parent, and the parent talking to the parents here, don't play this game. Don't get into this dynamic because it doesn't get anywhere. And you know it doesn't get anywhere because things don't improve oftentimes. So active listening means really listening to your teenager. And hopefully by modeling, they'll start listening to you. It means that you don't do this when you're mad at each other. You do this some evening, you're calm, people are calm, let's talk. And you start off by saying, what do you think about X? Let's say you think your child isn't doing their homework. You know, do you think you're doing your homework well enough? And then listen to what the child says and do not negate what they say. So if they say, yeah, I'm doing enough homework, and you think obviously not, you don't say that's wrong, you're not doing enough, you'll be a failure if you don't do it. You don't do that. If you attack them, they're going to get resistant. Confrontation leads to resistance. So you never want to confront them. So, but you can say, I hear that you believe, this is active listening. Repeat what you just heard. I hear you think you're doing enough homework. Are you getting good enough grades? And the teen might say, they usually won't lie. Well, no. Well, why do you think that is? Oh, I have a mean teacher. Then you say, so, I mean, it depends. You have to respond to what they tell you. You think the problem is the mean teacher. Well, in life, sometimes you have to deal with mean people. How do you think you could deal better with them? And that's sort of how the discussion goes. And ideally, when you give input to your teen, you don't tell them, well, this is how it's going to be. you tell them, well, here are some options. Maybe you think about it this way. Or maybe if you start doing your homework more, you'll find out it's easier than you think it is. Give them some options and then let them make the choice. And don't tell them, oh, that's the wrong choice. You think that will work? Okay, let's do that for a couple of weeks and let's meet again. Let's talk again and see how it works and what you think. So you want to shape the teens' thoughts rather than by listening and responding to what they're saying and working with their ideas. Then they'll feel respected. So even if ideas are wrong, they'll feel respected, and they'll find out not because you told them it's wrong, they'll find out for themselves. So your job as the parent in this kind of dynamic is to serve as a sounding board, to serve as a resource, giving some ideas, and to be there to support them as they find out whether their ideas are wrong or not. So only in life-threatening situations, a teen who insists on using narcotics or something, you need to say stop, or, I'm going to report you to the police, whatever. That's a rare event. Most of the parent-teen stuff is much more minor, and keep it that way. It's minor. And so many times I see all these battles occurring because of little things. I'll tell you a quick story. A patient I've known for 6 years, great teen, when he was 16, came in to see me. He said, I'm really angry at my mom. Why? Well, she lied about me. And I said, what do you mean? Well, we went on a trip and she complained to my grandmother that I didn't pack properly. And she had told me how to pack, she said to my grandmother, and I didn't do what she said. And that's a lie. I said, well, that doesn't sound like your mom. Well, I'm mad at her. And she lied to me about something else. And I said to him, well, did you talk to her about it? He said, no. I said, well, it doesn't sound like your mom. Let's bring her in. Because he's in therapy, we brought her in. And I said, did you tell him to pack? He said, yeah, I told him how to pack. We were at dinner. His girlfriend was there. We talked about it. And the teenager said, oh, yeah, sorry. And it was all gone. Everything was fine. I have this idea that if I hadn't intervened, he would have thought his mother lied about him. He would be mad about it. And then he would read further behavior with the mom as evidence of that. And this could have caused a rift. I think this kind of thing happens all the time with teens and their parents. And that's why communication is so important. I like to listen. I have learned a great deal from listening carefully. Most people never listen. Ernest Hemingway. Again, if you believe in when you believe in your teen's abilities and you listen to them, you're going to see some amazing things. Teach intention and perseverance is tip number 4. I've figured out that how well you do in life has little to do with your talent and with your knowledge and what college you went to. But what is important is your intention and that you can persevere. And this is what I believe you should teach your high school student. I've had kids who say, I have to get into the best college or else. And I talk to them about how, well, it doesn't really matter what college you go to if you don't work hard. You can have a very talented, strong, athletic individual who doesn't persevere and they will get nowhere. And I've worked with teens. I remember I used to teach bar and bat mitzvah students in Judaism. And there was this one girl who couldn't even carry a tune. And she was very poor in Hebrew. And I had to repeat, when you study for this, you read a verse in Hebrew and then the child repeats. So typically it takes 2 or 3 times. I must have done it 40, 50 times for each verse. But this girl knew how to persevere. And by the time her bat mitzvah rolled around, she did great. She did better than most of the kids I ever worked with because of perseverance. And I will, you can talk about leaders in this country. All great leaders persevere. You may not agree with their politics or their direction in life, but the way they got to where they are is they persevered. And that's the key. And your teen needs to hear that. So if your teen is not persevering, then part of the discussion should be how can you do better? What's standing in your way? Jack Cornfield said, be mindful of intention. Intention is the seed that creates our future. So very true. Tip number 5, sleep and exercise. First, sleep. Sleep is something teens often skimp on, especially in high school, AP classes, the diligent teens are up sometimes 11 or 12 at night. I really, if I had a hand in the educational system, I would tell those AP teachers to back off. You're not helping your students. Knowledge is great, but there's more to doing well in life than knowledge. And sleep is one of those things. So I think La Jolla High School has moved its starting time to later in the day, which I think is terrific. This has changed since my kids went to the high school. Sleep is, but teens often don't value sleep. And as a society, we often don't value sleep. And I think it's really helpful to have a discussion about why sleep is important. So aside from the fact that you get taller in your sleep, which appeals to some boys, and aside from the fact that you stay healthier when you sleep, sleep is when we make new connections in our brain. So if you study something at night, you'll know it better in the morning. So some teens like to get up early in the morning to study for their class to make up what they didn't finish at night. That's not the best way of studying. And so again, the reason that's not the best way of studying is because sleep, when you study something at night, your brain makes new connections, and that morning you know it better. So you have this discussion, and especially the driven teen who wants to do well will say, oh, so sleep is important. It's not something I should skimp on. And the average teen needs anywhere between 8 and 10 hours of sleep at night. They're not adults, they're still growing. And the way to tell if they're sleeping enough is in the morning, are they waking up easily, or do they have to be dragged out of bed? On weekends, are they sleeping till noon, catching up, or are they waking up at the same time? The ideal sleep schedule is go to sleep consistently at the same time, let's say 10 o'clock at night, and get up consistently at 7 in the morning. And if you're awake in the morning and that's what you do throughout 7 days a week, then you've got a good regimen for yourself. Some teens have trouble winding down before sleep. They use electronics, not a good thing. It stimulates, keeps them up. But again, don't be the draconian parents and no electronics. Have them, because you're going to use it at midnight. I know, talk to your friends, and some do, obviously, but you want to have a discussion. This is why this is not a good idea. What do you think? And again, most teens are reasonable if you're not angry at each other, and they'll say, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. So how do you think you can put your phone away so you're not disturbed by it? And so that's about sleep. Oh, by the way, also, if you have trouble falling asleep, if you learn hypnosis, you can use hypnotic techniques to fall asleep. So while hypnosis is not sleep, it can be used as a tool to get tired and fall asleep. Exercise, everybody knows exercise is important, but it's so important for long-term health, for the mind to work well. And as a teenager, and I talk to teens, I said, right now, as a teenager, you're responsible for raising yourself. Your parents are going to tell you things, but you don't listen to them if you don't want to. So it's your responsibility. You have a growing body, a growing mind. Take care of yourself. I talk about the fact the brain isn't fully formed until you're 25 years old. So when you're teenagers, you're only halfway there. So make sure what you show your brain is what you want it to build a foundation on for the rest of your life. And exercise also is such an important part of good health. Exercise, for example, works better for anxiety and depression than any medication you can be prescribed. Jim Rohn said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live in. Tip 6, improve study habits. We know, studying oftentimes is not the most important thing for many of our teens. Again, have a discussion with them. What are your goals? Is your goal to get into a good college? Is your goal to get good grades? Is your goal to have a great social life? And then if the goal is not to do well in school, then you need to sort of talk about maybe their long-term wants and wishes. And hopefully it'll come back to, I do need to study. And then you have high school kids who study with their friends and they're socializing instead of studying, or socializing more than studying, or the ones who are listening to loud music and really can't focus. So you want to have a discussion perhaps that studying efficiently gives you more free time. Studying efficiently gets out of the way earlier. Again, some of these teens are in a bunch of AP classes where the teachers give an inordinate amount of work, and the teen is up till midnight doing schoolwork. I would say if you have a kid like that, I would encourage him not to take so many AP classes. Life is long. There's plenty of time. The important stuff comes later. You want your child to come out happy and healthy mentally and physically out of the high school years. So I mean, some kids, really driven kids, you want to take the 5 AP classes because. I actually was like that. So I recognize that. But if they're listening to you, maybe take one less class, take an honors class, take a regular class. If it's important, you'll study it later. So make sure you have time. So here are some good study habit tips. Set aside a regular time and a place to study. Cut out distractions. Take breaks, short breaks, not breaks to play video games for an hour, short breaks. If they've learned hypnosis, I tell them do hypnosis. In hypnosis, you can make time seem longer. So in 5 minutes, it seems like you've been away for an hour. That's an efficient relaxation. And math and science, the first step is to understand the problem, what is given, what is wanted. When you read textbooks, look for the main thought in each paragraph and chapter and write it down for yourself. Just focus on those things. Get additional information from outside sources. Don't just take what the teacher gives you. You want to teach your teenager to collect their own information. That's, in fact, remember, learning how to learn is probably more important than the actual subject matter. Learning how to learn is the key, and that's the purpose. I can tell you from what I learned in medical school, I might use 5% of it at this point, but I learned how to learn and how to research things for myself. And rewrite the important ideas in your own words. And the reason for that is when you put it into your own words, you're actually processing the information and are learning it better. If you just copy it, you're not really learning. I could tell you that since electronic medical records came around and I'm typing as I talk to the patient, I don't remember much of what's said. I can read it later, but it goes from what the patient says to the typewriter. I don't remember. When I used to handwrite it, I remembered it much better, because that process requires some processing. Dealing with test anxiety, quite common, especially among high achieving kids. It's a real issue. Some kids say, I can never do a good test. SATs, I guess, are no longer useful in California, but I took my AP exam. I was too nervous to show what I know. So there's a lot of things kids can do with that. I'm going to talk about hypnosis because that's what I do, but you can generalize. So first of all, you want to, of course, be prepared. Second of all, when you take the test, if you can have a snack or a break during the test, take that break. You can imagine before the test, you can imagine taking the test and remaining calm. That's a rehearsal of doing well on tests. Also, during a test, if you've learned hypnosis techniques or other relaxation techniques like breathing, you can employ that to calm yourself. If you've learned hypnosis, you can actually ask your subconscious for input, for answers. So those are some tools. Let's talk about breathing a moment. So breathing technique I teach kids is to take in a breath slowly through their nose on a count of 3. Hold the breath for a count of 5. And exhale slowly through the mouth for a count of 7. In through the nose for a count of 3, hold for 5, exhale through the mouth slowly for a count of 7, and repeat it 5 to 10 times. What that breathing cycle does is it activates the vagus nerve. That's the nerve that connects the brain with the rest of the body and releases calming chemicals. So it's actually a calming, non-hypnotic technique that you can teach your teen. Just breathe. And then point number 8, go with the flow. So many people think you have to make things happen in life. But like in sports, if you try really hard to make a particular shot, it usually flops. You can't, when you focus really hard on a goal and work on making it happen, it's like, it doesn't work. Like if you think about walking, think about picking up your foot, putting it down, really focus on walking, you'll trip. Because when we think consciously, we mess things up. Our brains aren't fast enough to think consciously well. Going with the flow is letting your subconscious sort of go with the flow. So if any of you play a musical instrument, if you played for a while, the fingers play themselves. Or if you're an athlete, you can sort of see yourself playing well. You can sort of have an above the scene view. Going with the flow means trusting that things will work out. I remember I saw once a high school senior who wanted to go to Northwestern University. And she said, I have to go there. That's my dream school. It has everything I want. And I talked with her. Well, that's great. I hope you get into it. But if you don't get into it, that's okay. Wherever you go, you can do well. You're a smart girl. You know how to manage your attitude. And remember, intention and perseverance are the key elements. It's not the school you go to. So we talked about it. And then she did not get into Northwestern, but she didn't fall apart. She ended up getting accepted to Colorado State University, and she got all excited about there. And then she got accepted to University of Minnesota, and she got all excited about there and put down a deposit. And then she got accepted to Cal Berkeley, which she thought she would never get into. That really was her dream school, but she wasn't even able to say it. Go with the flow. Go with the flow applies to COVID. Thankfully, with Providence, we're leaving COVID now, but COVID has been very difficult, as you all know. I had patients who came to me during COVID really struggling because they were having trouble handling. In fact, one of the biggest problems coming now is, as we resume normal life, is that kids who were socially anxious before COVID are much more anxious now, because whoever has their volume on should turn it off. One of the things about COVID is that people who had social anxiety are more anxious than ever, because for a year or two, they didn't have to interact much socially. And when they have to come back to interact, they don't, they're out of practice. So I don't know if I can mute from my end here, but I'm not technologically advanced. Anyway, I'll just keep going. So with COVID, the patients who were in my system, already seeing them when it hit, we talked about how to handle a bad situation. The reason people get anxious and depressed in difficult situations is because they think about things that make them anxious and depressed. So when COVID hit and you thought,
yeah, I just want to say it did get resolved, but it was about, I'm not exaggerating, 15 hours of talking.
Could you ever mute whoever, somebody
The service
not muted?
was unacceptable.
I will.
No one wanted to take responsibility, and
I'll pause.
there was no higher level that I could go to file a complaint. It's only because I know the people in the branch so well.
Hold on.
No, when I talk to people and say, this is unacceptable, you guys have made a mistake, they're like, there's nowhere higher you can go.
I think
And
it's
there was nowhere
unacceptable
on the
that she can't.
website. If I hadn't been able to get
Do you know? Do
no
you know?
idea
Anybody know
of how to resolve this issue.
Zoom?
And I mean, I don't know if you looked at our account. We have our mortgage there.
Let me
We have
see.
savings accounts
Oh,
there. we
okay, I have to
checking
stop
accounts. We
share.
Charge about
Hold on.
$10,000 a month on the Chase
Then I
card.
can
We
go.
pay it off every
Chat.
month. I mean, I know you have big clients, but on
I
this
don't
close
know how to
review,
mute
she's trying to
everybody.
figure out if we'll just pull all our accounts because the
All
service is unacceptable. The only
Um,
reason
I'm
that
gonna
this
send her a
actually worked out
message.
is because I had
Please.
fraudulent activity on my
I tried
card,
that.
Please.
and the fraud department was able to talk to me about it.
Ronit or
But the travel
Joyce,
department didn't
one
want to
of
do
you guys
anything.
is not
There was
on
no
mute.
one to talk to. And when I tried to call people at Chase, they kept on saying you have to call travel. So
I don't
hope
know how to
there's
mute. on my
Ronit,
end.
can you please
phone
mute?
number or something you can do to people who need to resolve an issue and not just have, you listen to all the recorded calls. They'll
Oh, okay. I'm finding ways to mute now.
Okay,
All right, I did it. Yay. Okay, so let me go back. Wait. I have to screen share again. I apologize. All right. Well, going with the flow. So this is not a bad thing. It made me learn how to mute people. And by the way, so I could be frustrated now because we just got interrupted, but it's a good demonstration. So I'm not. I accept it. I'm going with the flow, and it's part of the slide. There you go. It was all planned. You just think it. So how do I handle it? Well, it happened. I can't control it. I could be sitting here moping about it, that my recording is ruined. But no, I'm using this to illustrate a point. And I learned something, how to mute people quickly on Zoom. So now I know for the future. And so I'm focusing on something I can control and is comfortable for me. So with COVID, and I didn't even lose my train of thought, which is good. So with COVID, rather than thinking about I might get sick or I might, my family members might die, or I'm cut off from my friends, or life will never be the same again, I focused on the positives, and there's always positives. So in COVID early on, we talked about, look how the environment cleaned up when we were all in lockdown. Wow, I didn't realize mankind had such an impact on the environment. It's worth thinking about as we move forward. I'm stuck at home with my family. This is a time I can get to know my family better. I have all this free time I usually don't have. Maybe I can use it to develop a new skill that I wouldn't have developed if I hadn't had COVID, if COVID hadn't happened. So some of my patients learned a foreign language, some of them learned to invest in the stock market, some of them learned a musical instrument. The kids did really well. They used the time well. So any bad thing has a good aspect. And when you think about the good aspects, you feel better. Personally, with my practice, I got lots of government assistance and loans, which were really cool. It helped me make my practice even stronger. So I don't look at the COVID years as bad. I could, but what good would that do for me? So I just go with the flow. And when you go with the flow and you trust things are going to go the way it's supposed to, then life is much easier to take. When you try to keep fighting life, it's difficult. So that's the last tip. And, oh, I didn't move it to slideshow. Believe in yourself and all that you are. Know that there is something inside you that is greater than any obstacle. And this is what I teach the teens. They truly have a lot of inner strengths, and it's a matter of expressing them to do well in life. So those are my 8 tips. Now I'd be happy to answer questions so you can unmute yourselves. And I hope this was worthwhile for you. Let's see. Anybody have a question? Sarah.
Oh,
You're
I'm
unmuted.
I'm Sally, by the way, but
Oh, Sally, it was just.
yeah, Sarah's my daughter. That's what that's Marcia. She told in the beginning. Anyways, oh well, I kind of had some questions, but with this technical muting thing, I forgot. But the book you have, it's more about this kind of technique a doctor need to guide, or because you mentioned something really, really related to meditation, which I'm not 100% involved. I don't, but I'm really interested. But it seems like a meditation. It's a way to go.
Correct.
I mean, this is millenniums, and in other countries in Oriental culture, but I know now the Westerns trying, the doctors and intellectuals are trying to take us from that path. So I'm thinking about, of course, if we are meditating in the morning, or we're know how to breathe and stuff, we're gonna be a little bit more open to our sons and daughters. And because your specialty is in hypnosis, right? So if it is kind of related to meditation,
Correct.
kind of,
Correct.
right? Can you explain a little bit the
Yes.
similar, the
Yeah, so-
similar things, right? Oh, that is great. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
thank you for asking the question. So first of all, the difference between meditation and hypnosis, they both involve changing mindset. So they're both good. I think we need to change our mindset in so many ways. Meditation, the goal is to let go of thoughts. So just to be in the moment. And you do that by focusing on a specific mantra, or on your breath, or on loving kindness thoughts. Just focus on that, and any other thoughts that come in, you're supposed to let go. Don't engage with them. That's meditation. Hypnosis is different in that it also involves a different mindset, but it has a specific goal. So your goal could be to relax, but your goal could be to do better in athletics, or overcome your test anxiety, or fall asleep. So it's much more goal oriented. Now, my book is actually, I think it's fairly unique in that I wrote it first of all for parents. So this is for you. And it's not a how to do hypnosis guide. There are books like that. But it's several of my, it's like 20 years worth of patients, and it talks about examples of how hypnosis can be useful. My hope is that people will read it and said, oh, I didn't realize hypnosis can be used for this, and it'll interest people in learning more about it. So for example, in chapter 13 of the book, I talk about a young man who had abdominal pain for 13 years. By the time I saw him at 16, and he'd been through many medications and many treatments and many tests. And then 3 weeks after learning hypnosis, it basically all went away. But the reason I wrote about him is not that the abdominal pain went away, because it's pretty cool. That's kind of miraculous for him. But he showed me how creative you could be in hypnosis. His subconscious wrote poetry. He's a musician. And I learned that the seed of creativity is the subconscious. J.K. Rowling tells a story that the whole Harry Potter saga came one day into her head, fully formed. How did that happen? I think it came from her subconscious. So another use of hypnosis is to become more creative. If you're an artist, you can be shown a painting in your mind, and then you just draw what you're seeing in your mind as an example. So the book just shows a lot of different ways. This whole idea of talking to the subconscious is fairly cutting edge. Most hypnotists don't even do it. And when they talk to the subconscious, they more tell it, do this, do that, as opposed to listening to the child. And when I talked about listening to the child, that you should do as parents, in my opinion, I do with my patients. And that's how they discover. It's really, I call it a journey to the center. I help them journey to their own center. And that's what the book's about. Other questions?
Thank you. Yeah. And you put here the way we can buy this book. We can have access to this book. It's in Amazon, right?
That's on Amazon. Yeah. Just search under my name. It's probably the easiest than typing the whole title.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Other questions or reactions? I mean, do people agree with what I'm happy to discuss. If something that wasn't clear or you don't agree with it, I'd be happy to hear I listen very carefully. And even if I disagree, I will be respectful. And this is, again, with your teens, I actually enjoy with my patients arguing with them in a polite way. So, whatever the position I take, I like to take an opposite position, just so we can learn to listen to each other respectfully, even when we disagree. And this is a lesson our society needs to learn, because people are not listening for a large part. You just try to shut people down. I just think that's a wrong way to go. So I'm doing my part by teaching my patients to be more respectful of other opinions. Even, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you find that a lot of teenagers have gastrointestinal issues related to anxiety and stress?
Absolutely. That's irritable bowel syndrome is typically the diagnosis they come with, but they have abdominal pain and the doctors can't find anything wrong. And sometimes they treat them with medication. Sometimes they start doing different diets, and it's stress related. So when they learn to manage their stress, and actually that's one area that there's a lot of medical literature published on this, on hypnosis for irritable bowel syndrome, and it works really well. It works better than any other therapy out there. I'll also tell you that people with inflammatory bowel disease, so Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, which are serious physical illnesses, they're also exacerbated by stress, and learning how to control their emotions helps those symptoms improve as well. But while irritable bowel syndrome will resolve with hypnosis in some patients, like the kid I just told you about in chapter 13, if you've got ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, it's not going to go away, but it will be under better control.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about, so we're actually going to be starting high school and getting on this journey of AP classes and honors and all that. And I'm the one that's telling my kid, no, it's okay, back off. You don't need to do all this. I need you to be happy. And she's going the perfectionist route. I need to do, I want to do everything. I guess with all of your different suggestions, what's kind of the route to help the overachiever, like
Yes.
realize that, how do I just not
Yes.
strive for all that all the time?
Yes, well, as I said, I recognize that kind of thinking from myself when I was younger. So first of all, with the perfectionist, I'm glad you mentioned her. I have a discussion about how it's really impossible to function well as a perfectionist. And the reason is that if your goal is to do everything the best you can, everything you do, you're going to limit what you can accomplish, or you're going to be very frustrated, because to do everything you can do for any one area takes a lot of time and effort. And if you're doing it for every single area you're in, especially as you get into high school, it's not going to work. There aren't enough hours in a day. That's the kind of kid who sometimes stays up till midnight trying to finish her homework, and she's still not happy because she didn't get it all done. So you need to have that discussion with her, first of all, to explain why it is, because if she's a driven girl, as you described, she's going to want to do more and more and more. And at some point, it's too much. And you can ask her, how will you know it's too much? What kind of clues? And again, don't tell her, ask her, what do you think? Or first you start off, well, you believe it can be too much? And if she says no, then you have the discussion about being realistic. But basically, they'll agree there's too much. And then the discussion is when there's too much. So that's a discussion I would have. I, for example, I talk about myself because as teaching points. So when I went to UCSD as a college student, I took 4 classes, and that was really easy. So I took 5, and that was easy. I took 6, that was easy, and I took 8 with the dean's office permission, but that was too much. And then I was okay with dropping 2 classes because I was trying to be the editor of the newspaper at the same time. I'm telling this story not to say I did a lot in college, but to say, even for me, there's a limit, and that's true for anybody. So I'm all in favor of somebody doing their best, but you have to acknowledge at some point it's too much, and then you have to be clever enough to cut back. So first I'd have that discussion, and then the discussion would be, why do you want to do all the AP classes? And they might say, I want to get into a good college, or I want to keep up with my friends, and none of those are not good arguments. And then, but you don't say it's not a good argument, but you want to listen to her and then give, well, maybe it's not about getting into a good college, it's about doing well in life, right? And the best way to do well in life, for example, is not to try to do your best at everything, but to do well enough in many things, and maybe you're best in one thing. That's the way you're going to be the best person you can be. And so we have that discussion. And I would have the discussion now before she gets into high school, because once she gets into high school as in AP classes, she's not going to drop them. And so if you can again, you have to let her, don't impose it, because if you say, nope, not going to allow you to do that, then she'll be mad at you and she won't even be dealing with her own issues. So, and if she decides she wants to go for all the classes, okay, go ahead, but, be aware. And, if you change your mind, that's okay too. That's how I would approach that perfectionistic young lady who will do well in life as long as she does not get in her own way.
Thank you.
Does that make sense, Kathy? Is that?
Yeah, it does. It's, I'm always trying to, I like the idea of the hypnosis. That I think that really could be very helpful for her.
Well, if her
to just get
subconscious,
some more calming in and sleeping. And again, that like, hey, sleep is the answer to really help you out.
And generally, when I talk to the subconscious of the kid, it's virtually always has its head on straight. So the subconscious will tell you that same thing I'm just told you. So it's the exception where the subconscious is wild as well. Typically, the inner self is pretty wise. And that's really a great tool, because when a teen hears it from themselves, then they're more apt to listen.
Very good.
A few more moments.
I have a question for you. That how can we find you to have some sessions of hypnosis for our children.
So if you go to the website, the centerpointhypnosis.com, it'll have a link to my practice website. My practice website is centerpointmedicine.com. But that's how you can find me. I will tell you, I have, since I came here 6 years ago, with the goal of showing you could have a full-time practice in pediatric hypnosis and counseling and be able to afford to live in La Jolla, which I fortunately was able to do. I have this promise I made to the children of Southern California, which is I'm never going to close. One of the complaints I have about standard mental health practices is that they're often closed, especially the good ones. And I don't think that's right. I think so, but in order to stay open, it means I've expanded. So I have 7 different providers right now. So if you call, and if you want me in particular, it might be a couple of months, but if you want to work with somebody else, you could be seen within the week. So I just want to throw that out there. And I've trained most everybody here, so they have the same philosophy that I do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts about how to stop sort of the group mentality? I feel that the students and the teachers all sort of feed off each other and create an anxiety whirlwind of, the teachers trying to get everything done. It makes the kids have anxiety and the kids, stressed about their APs and et cetera. Are there suggestions that we have for the teachers or sort of just how we conduct our day in and day out school life that we could possibly implement to lower the stress level and lower the anxiety level? Our school is in the process of bringing in some mental health counselors to add to the team. And part of the feedback that I get a lot is that, we're sort of we're trying to put in a solution, but we're not fixing the causes. And I'm wondering if you had any thought about how there's sort of a whirlwind of, one person's anxious, so it makes other people anxious, and it just kind of doesn't stop. And if you had any thoughts about suggestions to make it stop.
I really appreciate the question. And, I think you're absolutely right. You don't want to treat the symptom of anxious, burned out kids. You need to work on the cause. So from my perspective as a former La Jolla High School parent, and as a parent of in many other schools, I think one of the problems that is a systemic problem is a lack of communication between the teachers. I think what I would suggest is somebody shadow a high achieving student and see what their day is like the mental health counselor, and realize it's really an impossible task that these kids are asked to do, from my perspective. I think it's ridiculous that we expect them. I think teachers need to coordinate. I don't think it's right for every AP teacher to give their college level curriculum and expect the child to act at a college level when they're in high school. And of course, if the teacher expects it, your driven students try to live up to that. So if I was starting from ground zero, I would first investigate the current level of stress, and hopefully administration will realize, hey, this is unreasonable what we're expecting of our kids. And then talk to the faculty and talk about, maybe like when I took 8 classes, the dean's office had to sign off. Maybe there should be a policy you can only take 2 AP classes unless you have special dispensation or something, or 3 AP. Decide. So make it something weird or difficult to attain. So right now, at least the way it was when I was involved with La Jolla High, there was no limit. A kid could sign up whatever they wanted to. Maybe there should be a limit put on by the school to help keep the kids in check, the ones who are high achieving. You have a whole nother host of kids who are unplugged already, which is a whole nother issue. And maybe we should talk about briefly as well how to address their needs. But I think it's like in the medical world, a lot of doctors are burning out because of the electronic medical record and now COVID. And the hospital administration said, oh, we'll give them free membership in gyms. How ridiculous. The problem is not that we are stressed out. The problem is that the workload is impossible. So I guess that's how I would start. I would do some fact finding about what it's like to be in the current system and ask myself very basic questions. How do I change the system so that we have more reasonable expectation of our kids. And then I can already hear voices, but they won't get into their best colleges. They won't be competitive with other kids. And then I would say to you, it's not about getting into the best colleges. It's about raising kids who are successful, who thrive, who are happy, and live to their best potential. It's not about the best college. And maybe if it's starting La Jolla High School, you'll get better adjusted kids coming out of here. And if they don't go to Harvard and they go to UC schools instead, they'll do really well on that level and then become leaders in this world. I think that doing your very best to get into the best schools and burning out doesn't get you anywhere. Do you have any feedback on that? I haven't thought about it. I'm glad to think about it. It's an interesting question.
No, I think, I mean, that's definitely the way a lot of the private schools are going, and they're eliminating AP exams. And a lot of schools are not taking it. You know, it is a group mentality though, where, you know, not only do the kids think it, but the parents think it, and, you know, the school tries to deliver what the parents, you know, want, et cetera. But I guess I'm more curious as to, and you're right about what you said about the doctors. I know, you know, San Diego Unified has tried to, you know, give the teachers, you know, meditation training and breathing exercises, and that didn't really go over so well. For the exact same reason, it's really about workload. But I'm wondering if there's more on the lines of hypnosis and suggestions about how the teachers could talk to the students when they're, I mean, we're already down a path, right? So the systemic change you're talking about, you know, it's a process, but we're in it, you know, now. Are there things and words and phrases from the hypnosis standpoint that you think would be valuable for teachers to know, or do you really think it's a patient client, a patient doctor experience, or a parent child experience as opposed to a teacher?
Right. Great question. Thank you so much. Yes, I think there are things teachers can be taught, and there's not enough therapists in the world to work with every child. Ideally, every child, like I have some kids that counsel, and long-term, they choose to keep getting counseling. And I think, wouldn't it be nice if every teenager had a counselor who could talk to at any time? But it's not realistic. So, okay, so teachers, first of all, I would teach the teachers about positive talk. There are some teachers for whom negativity is the course, you know, and we, in some ways, you know, we give grades, you got a D, you got a C. And I would hope, for example, when the teacher gives the child the feedback, that they're, rather than saying that was bad, that they're saying this could be better and in this way. So a positive approach to didactic, to teaching would be really key. So I might have sessions with the teachers and review, like, how do you handle a student who is not performing well? What kind of feedback do you give them? How do you give it in a way that's most constructive? For your disengaged student, for example, some teachers just give the bad grade, or some teachers disengage from disengaged students because it's hard. I remember one time I was working in Philadelphia, and I had a patient with asthma who was a really nice kid, wasn't doing well in school, and I had the time to go visit his school. So I went to the school and talked to his counselor. I said, this is a really nice kid. If you work with him, he'll get to college. And the counselor said, well, I have 800 kids I have to follow. I don't have time to worry about the kids who are floundering. I can barely keep up with the kids who want to do well. And I said to myself, how sad. So perhaps at a classroom level, if a child is disengaged, if the teacher can make the time to listen to the child, find out why they're disengaged and maybe how to engage them. But again, the active listening, maybe they can help. Sometimes the disengagement has nothing to do with the child can do. It could be a chaotic home environment that the child lives in, and there's nothing they can do. But sometimes it might just be a fact. I saw a girl just yesterday, came to see me for anxiety and depression, 13-year-old, anxiety and depression. And I'm saying, when did it start? She said, it started in 5th grade. Why are you anxious, depressed? School was hard. Okay. Did you tell anyone? No, I didn't really care about grades. And then, but this year my grades are going down and I'm really anxious, depressed. And by the way, when I was in 6th grade and 7th grade, it was online teaching, grades didn't matter. So now I'm facing this. So why are you having so much trouble at school? Well, you know, I can't focus very well. And, you know, I can't comprehend very well. And I said, oh, and so if I read something to you, do you hear it better than if you read it yourself? She says, yeah. I said, well, maybe you have a learning disability. Maybe you have dyslexia. Maybe you have ADD. You should get evaluated. Your anxiety and depression is because you're having trouble in school. So the solution is going to be to work on your school issues. But apparently nobody ever listened to this child. This child is floundering. Like, oh, she didn't tell her parents because she thought she'd be punished for not doing her homework. She doesn't do her homework because it's too hard for her. So I think some of the floundering kids, if somebody just took time to listen and then listen carefully and not say, no, that's not it, and follow it, we could help our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any final thoughts? Any feedback? What did you find valuable? What did you think?
It was all very valuable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. If I can help in any way to La Jolla High School, I'm committed. I'm part of the community. If you want me to talk to your kids at some point, I'll do whatever I can to help. We all have to do this together, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much
much.
for your time.
Absolutely. Be well and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.